Hey friends, my name is. Oh gosh, here we go again. Okay, can't even get through my intro. Hey friends, my name is Richie and welcome back to my channel, Gender Not Found. So, I have an update for you guys, a really cool update. So I mentioned to you guys that Ethernet situation, and I was testing it out last night and it wasn't working, so I was looking online to try. Oh gosh, and again. I was looking online to try and find some solutions and try and find the reason why this was happening. And I found I found a few solutions, so I went through a few of them, and the one that I was on, I went through a few of them the other night and last night, and then the last one that and then the one that I landed on, eventually was The one I landed on eventually was um, getting the USB to Ethernet adapter because I do indeed have an internet port on my computer, but the thing is they're not. I read an article online that had the 10 reasons why your Ethernet might be slow, and part of it, one of it was like that your Ethernet ports aren't wired for that amount of Ethernet. So, and like laptops made after 2006, etc., might not have that. I don't know. I don't know. Whatever. You get the point. The point is, so I got yesterday I ordered a USB to Ethernet adapter, and I told you my mom was over yesterday to pick up my laundry and stuff, and she dropped it off today, and I wasn't expecting to be able to get the USB to Ethernet, the USB to Ethernet adapter until Saturday, until tomorrow, and I wasn't expecting to be able to upload. I wasn't expecting to be able to upload any videos until Sunday because I was going to have the Ethernet adapter on Saturday, but then me and my mom were going to be hanging out the whole day, so I was going to set that up on Sunday and start putting videos up on Sunday. Try and do the burst upload on Sunday and see if it was working and stuff, but luckily my mom was able to drop. Well, luckily my mom dropped off my laundry, and that included my package because it arrived on time, like before my mom showed up. So when she called me, she was like, "Hey, your package is here," and etc. etc. I'm gonna drop it off, and I didn't even realize she was planning to drop off my laundry today. I thought she was dropping it off tomorrow, because tomorrow's Saturday. So I thought she was gonna drop it off tomorrow, but turns out, no, she's gonna drop it off today. And then, so I set up the USB to Ethernet adapter, literally just plug it into a USB port, and then you plug the Ethernet cable into the other end, and that's it. So I, uploaded a couple test videos, and it's going pretty well. It's going really well. I think it might even be faster than the internet at my mom's place, because, I don't think it was as fast as online was making it out to be. There might be some other stuff that's happening that's making it not as fast as it should be, but I'm sure it's fast enough. Okay, it's fast enough. So I don't. It's fast enough. So like I said, it might even be a little bit faster than the internet at my mom's place. I don't know. I'm not sure like if she has 1 gigabyte per second internet or not. I don't think so, but other than that, but regardless of anything, I have Ethernet and it's pretty fast, and I'm not gonna like worry about a huge thing right now because it took like less, like maybe 9 or 10 minutes to upload a 20-minute video, which means, like, basically, if that's working how it's gonna work, then the time, you just half the time between each video. And then, so like, an hour, so like, a 20-minute video takes 10 minutes to upload, so a 20-minute video takes 10 minutes to upload, so if that works how it works out with the other videos, that means like an hour video takes 30 minutes to upload, a 2-hour video takes an hour to upload, which means like if I make an 8-hour video, it's gonna take like 4 hours to upload, and if I make a 24-hour video, it's gonna take 12 hours to upload. Wow, okay. So yeah, and it might not be. I don't know if I was just getting a little bit of misinformation off the internet on how fast 1000 Mbps actually is, or if I was just, or if there's still some kind of problem that I'm not detecting that might make it a lot faster. But it's really fast for now, like for me at least, and I think we're good as far as that goes, and I'm not gonna worry about a big thing with it. And I'm just gonna I'm not gonna go into a huge thing. But anyway, so I uploaded the test videos and I uploaded like yeah, I uploaded the test videos and that's going pretty good. So I decided I'm gonna do some burst uploads in the next couple of days. I might try and record some chapters today for a burst upload. So in this video I'm gonna do chapter 9 and chapter 59 and 60. And next video is going to be chapter 60 and 61, and then the next video after that is going to be chapter 62 to 67, which is 63 to 67, so like 5 chapters, so like 2.5 hours, so maybe it'll take an hour, or it'll take an hour or maybe a little more to upload. Yeah. But like if I make like 3 4 hour videos, then if I upload them one at a time, it'll only take 6 hours to upload all three of them together. Like, as I think I'm doing my math correctly, right? I'm correct on that. But anyway, we're gonna read chapter 59 of the book that I can't even. God, can't even do this correctly. All right, let's so let's record a chap. Let's read a chapter of a guardian angel that I'm on. Okay, there is a lot happening. There was a lot happening, by the way. So if you just look. Anyway, so wait. I think I went too far down. Yep. Chapter 59: Secrets, Waterfalls, and Accidents. Uh-oh. 72 hours. All it had taken was 72 hours before Marshall was back to his usual self. The nausea was gone and his balance was back, and his exhaustion was a thing of the past once again. Fiona had driven the pair back to her house the night before, and the blonde was positive that Marshall had made it his mission to get her as hot and bothered as humanly possible. First, he'd started with the little things in the car ride, just talking about everything. Then he started bringing up their romantic moments together, talking specifically about things that made her mind wander in all sorts of tempting directions. Finally, Fiona decided that if Marshall drove, then he'd have to stop distancing. Then he'd have to stop distracting her, so pulling into a rest stop on the premise of snacks and a drink, she hurried into the store, leaving behind a smirking Marshall who happily took the place as driver waiting for Fiona to return. What Fiona hadn't expected, though, was the fact that since Marshall was a better, more experienced driver than she was, he didn't need two hands to drive. It started off as little finger touches across her arm as he reached for a snack. Then it was tickling fingers along her arm or shoulder, then on her knee and thigh as he smirked at her, leaving Fiona blushing. It was a long car ride home. Fiona sat in her American literature class, reading the passage in her book, when she felt her phone vibrate against her leg. Reaching into the pocket of her skirt and glancing up to be sure that the professor wasn't looking her way, Fiona quickly read the message, blushing. Marshall. So I was thinking about that time we went swimming at the waterfall. Oh my. Glancing up, she spotted the professor typing away at his laptop before quickly responding. Fiona knew that Marshall knew what he was doing to her. He knew exactly what he was doing, and knowing that tonight was a late night for her parents, Fiona played along, her mind also wandering to that night at the waterfall. Fiona, were you? Marshall was quick. Marshall was quick to reply, and sneaking a peek of the text, Fiona blushed hard. Yup, I cannot wait for you to get home. Quickly she texted out a reply, her heart pounding, as she waited for the reply, completely unable to focus on the passage in the book she was supposed to be reading. Really now? Why is that? Again the response was almost immediate, and this time Fiona almost gasped. Because I'm thinking of all the things I want to do to you when you get here. Now she was curious, excruciatingly curious about exactly what he was planning to do to her. Like what? Now the blonde waited, but the instantaneous replies she'd been receiving had ceased. Like what, Marsh? Chewing her lip, she went back to reading, glancing at her phone every few minutes while her mind wandered. Eventually the class ended, and packing her backpack, Fiona hurried from the room and sat on a bench outside in the quad. Staring at the phone, the blonde understood his game. He was getting her all hot and bothered to make her think about what he was planning. Fiona hated to admit it, but it was working. But maybe two could play this game. Marshall sat in the family room, reading the text Fiona had sent him with a grin. Like what, Marsh? He knew exactly what he was doing to her because at this rate, when she came back to the house, she'd maul him, which honestly he was definitely looking forward to. He'd been halfway through a movie when he heard his cell phone's text tone. Oh my glob, it's hot out. It's a good thing I have this skirt on because the breeze is just great on my legs. Now Marshall was thinking, what skirt was she wearing today? The little blue skirt, or maybe that really hot red, black, and plaid one? That really hot red and black plaid one? Now he wanted to text her back and caught himself before he did. That's exactly what she wanted him to do. Putting his phone down, Marshall focused back on the movie when the text tone went off again, and then a second time after that. He didn't want to look at it. He knew Fiona was baiting him, but despite that, he read the text. I'm gonna have to shower when I get home. The water will feel so good on my hot, sweaty skin. Or maybe we could, or maybe we could go swimming at the waterfall. Okay, maybe it was going to be him jumping her when she got back. He resisted for another few minutes, but giving in, Marshall texted the blonde back. I look forward to it. She won. Fiona so won this round, and Marshall knew it. With a sigh, he went up to the blonde's room, knowing that she'd be back within the hour. Flopping on the bed, he wondered just what they would do when she got back. It felt as if her last class had taken forever, and forever was an understatement. It hadn't taken her a long walk home, because luckily the community college was located near her old high school, just a few blocks away from it. Walking up the walkway, the blonde looked around for any sign of her parents as she made her way inside the house. I'm home, she called out, pulling her backpack off her shoulders as she climbed the stairs. Anybody home? She asked, walking along the second floor before opening the door to her room. Hello, beautiful. Miss me? Marshall asked from the bed, his head resting on his hands, watching as Fiona dropped her backpack and smirked at him. She was wearing the black and red skirt. Well, you made it really hard not to miss you, Fiona said as she kicked her shoes off and walked over to the bed and climbing onto Marshall's lap, straddling him. With a grin, he held onto her hands and sat up, wrapping his arms around her waist while Fiona leaned forward, catching his lips with hers. Well, it's like I said, I was thinking about that night at the waterfall, and I haven't stopped thinking since, Marshall said softly, pulling back a moment. So you had to make me all hot and bothered at school? Oh, yes. Now Fiona laughed into the kiss, feeling as his hand moved up her skirt as they shifted positions. I think swimming would be a great idea, the blonde said with a grin, giving him a loud kiss on the lips before hopping off the bed. What? But I thought we were gonna. We will, but since you teased me all day, I want to go swimming, Fiona said as she smirked, motioning for him to follow her as she walked from the room. With a sigh, Marshall followed after the blonde, knowing full and well that she wouldn't leave without him. Grabbing his hoodie, he pulled it on and zipped it up, pulling the hood over his head. The sun was almost set, and he knew by the time they got to the waterfall, it would be low enough that he could swim without having to worry. Fiona held his hand as they walked down the street, heading towards the familiar wooded path that led to their secret place. Together they hopped off the old bridge, following the river against the current. They passed the tree with the arrow cut in it, and after another few minutes they passed a giant boulder until finally they reached the clearing. Recalling the first time they'd come here, Fiona smirked and looked over at Marshall. I know the rules state that nakedness is a must, but I'm still not stripping in the woods, she said with a grin as they headed towards the waterfall, Marshall laughing as they did so. Okay, maybe I made the everyone must be naked rule up, he said, smirking as he pulled off his hoodie and handing Fiona his shirt as they undressed. I hoped you did, because what would that mean if that rule was real and this was yours and FP's secret hideout? Fiona asked, leaving only his shirt on as she folded her clothes, making it plainly obvious that she wore nothing beneath his shirt as she left her panties and bra on top of the pile. You are an extremely perverse little woman, Marshall said, following the blonde into the cool water. You like it, she said the moment he grabbed her, the pair moving deeper in the water. I never said I didn't. Nuzzling his face into her neck, Marshall started kissing her, his hands wandering under her shirt until Fiona pushed them away as she turned in his arms. Swim time, we can play later, she said with a grin, watching him smirk as she dove into the water, popping up a bit farther away. You're teasing me, and it's cruel and unusual punishment, he called after her, moving deeper in the water as he swam towards the blonde. Hearing this, Fiona laughed, closing her eyes and leaning back as she floated on the surface of the water. She could hear him slowly approaching and made it a point to swim away from him. You're a brat. You're a brat. I'm a lot of things, Marsh, Fiona said, now heading to the outcrop of rocks and climbing them, sitting on the edge, looking down on her boyfriend. I have a feeling that you're leading me on here, Fiona. Do you want me to chase you? Marshall asked, now splashing water up at the blonde above him. Maybe, but of course you'd never be able to catch me. Wouldn't I? Eventually you would, but only because I want to be caught, she said with a grin, hopping off the rocks, Marshall catching her as they both fell into the water, laughing. Time passed and the skies darkened, and wrapping her arms around his neck, Fiona kissed Marshall, feeling as he smiled against her lips. It's time to go home, don't you think? She asked, pulling back and walking to the shore. I think you read my mind. The walk home was quick, and after hurriedly dressing, the pair made their way back to the house, unable to keep their hands off of each other, and after confirming that they were the only two people at the house, the pair quickly made their way up to her room. Fiona kicked the door shut as Marshall walked them backwards, towards the bed, falling backwards as it met the back of his knees. Straddling him, Fiona sat up, tugging her shirt off, and doing the same to Marshall as she began kissing his neck. Rolling on top of the blonde, Marshall could feel her squirming beneath him and pulling her closer to him by her hips. Marshall listened as she let out a soft, breathy gasp. Then suddenly he paused as the blonde continued kissing him. He thought he'd heard something. Marsh! Quickly he put the tips of his fingers against her lips. Shh! But... Shh! Immediately they both heard it, the rustling downstairs before the voice. Fiona, Marshall, are you guys home? The voice was getting louder. It was coming up the stairs. Crap, it's my dad, Fiona whispered as they both scrambled from the bed, looking around for their clothes, both realizing how extremely suspicious it would look with just one of them in the room. So taking a chance, Marshall just grabbed the blonde, pulling her into the closet with him. The moment the closet door shut, there was a knock on her door. Fiona was held tightly in Marshall's arms, his fingers still on her lips as he shushed her, the sound of her door opening. Right at this moment, he was thanking any holy power he could that there was already scattering of his clothes on her floor, or that would look even more suspicious. Fiona? Marshall? Huh, I thought they'd be here. Oh well, I'll just leave the money for takeout on her desk, Steve said as he looked around, finding a piece of paper as he began writing a note for the pair. In the closet, Fiona was trying desperately not to make any noise, because it seemed that Marshall was trying to get them caught. His fingers were rubbing along her legs and tickling little patterns, and covering her own mouth to keep herself quiet. The blonde grabbed Marshall's hand, making him stop as they listened to the sound of retreating footsteps. Once they heard her father leave the room, closing the door behind him, the blonde turned quickly, crashing her lips against his as they moved out of the closet. They didn't even make it to the bed, and neither cared. Marshall kissed the blonde everywhere he could reach while holding her tightly, her arms wrapped around his neck, her fingers tangled in his hair as they both panted heavily, lying on the floor, the rest of their clothes scattered around the room. That was amazing, Fiona said softly as she laughed, feeling as Marshall continued kissing her neck, tickling her in the process. Maybe we should do this again, she said, giving him the look and watching as he smirked at her, knowing exactly what she meant. Her parents wouldn't be back for several more hours. Yeah, we should. That was intense, he said, letting go of the blonde and grabbing a pajama shirt near them for her just in case her parents came home. Reaching down to get rid of the condom, Marshall froze in shock as realization then utter horror set in. Seeing the look on on his face, the first thing Fiona felt was concern. Did he hurt himself? What happened? Marshall, what's wrong? She asked quickly, feeling unnerved as he stared at her. Fiona, I have to tell you something, and I need you to not freak out. Oh no. That's gonna be really, really hard to do, okay? He said nervously, grabbing a pair of pants and pulling them on. Okay, what's wrong? The blonde asked as her heart began pounding. We didn't. I forgot to use the condom, he said nervously, watching as slowly Fiona's face changed from concern to horror as her skin drained of all its color. Honestly, she looked like she was about to faint. Marshall, I'm too young to have a baby. We're too young to be parents. Oh my glob! Immediately, she buried her face in her hands, trying and failing to hold back her tears. It's okay. We can fix it. We can fix it. They have medicine for this kind of situation, Marshall said, trying to calm her down. We'll go get it right now, okay? You don't even have to get out of the car. I'll go inside and I'll get it and everything, Marshall said, standing the blonde up and handing her more clothes as he pulled her towards the door. Oh, okay. Quickly dressing himself, Marshall grabbed the keys and Fiona's hand as he brought her downstairs, heading towards their car. The drive to the pharmacy was quick, and Marshall ran inside, spending the $50 that would, hopefully, ultimately save their lives from drastically changing forever with a beautiful bundle of oops. Before he left, Marshall bought a bottle of juice and a pregnancy test as well, quickly heading back to the car where Fiona had finally stopped crying. Opening the pack, he handed the blonde the juice and the pill, watching as she took a sip before popping the pill in her mouth and swallowing it. You're sure this will make sure that I don't get pregnant? It's 95% effective, says the package. When are you due for your period? What? Why? She asked in embarrassment. Fiona, when? Um, next week. Why? Okay, if you're late at all, let me know, like that day, okay? Oh, okay. Together they sat in silence for the longest time, before finally Fiona spoke up once again. Marsh? Yeah? He asked, looking over at her in concern. What if I am late? She asked quietly, her mind racing. Her parents would kill them. Then I'll bring you to the doctor's for a blood test just to make sure if this test comes up as positive, Marshall said, holding the plastic bag up for Fiona to see. And if it doesn't, then we know that the pill worked. You can get a false negative, by the way. Do we have to tell my parents about this? Only if the test comes back positive and you want to. I don't. Not at all. My mom will kill me so hard that I'll die to death, Marshall. I know. I'm so sorry, Fiona. You should be. We're too young to be parents, Marshall. Babies are expensive. Then we both have to live with our parents for the next 10 years or so until we could save enough to take care of the baby and ourselves, Fiona said shrilly with her hand on her forehead. Money's not something you have to worry about with me, Fiona, Marshall said softly. Marsh, I know that you like to pay for everything when we do stuff, but even you wouldn't be able to afford a baby. They're not easy. Jake and Lady were having such a tough time with just Jackie, and now with Charlie in the mix, they're barely staying above water. And with Baby, there's no more band and no more music. And with no band and music, there's no money, and we're back to completely broke. Fiona, I have a lot of money, okay? My dad left me a lot of money when he died. If we ever end up having children, if that happens, we'll still be set, Fiona. They won't want for a single thing, ever. Now the blonde looked at Marshall incredulously. What? And on top of it all, I still get checks monthly from the sales of his band's CDs. Fiona, You don't have to worry about money. If we have a family, we'll be financially covered. Like, seriously, you won't ever have to worry about that at all. My God, Marshall, you don't just go around telling people that. It's how you get taken advantage of. Now she sighed. Let's just go home. I want to take a shower. Okay. Marshall listened to the sound of the shower down the hall. Fiona had been in there for a while, and he knew from experience that the blonde always took long showers when she was upset. It's not like he could blame her for being upset either. For all he knew, she could end up pregnant because they bought the one defective Plan B pill out of the batch. She had every right to be upset, but now it was just a waiting game. It would take a week to know if they're in the clear or not. A week to know if their lives would be changing forever. Okay, that was the chapter, and that was that's something. So I guess we're gonna see if they have a baby. I'm kind of hoping they don't, cause that's unplanned kids are honestly it's a numbers game. Like I mean like um when Rachel was gonna have a baby in Friends, and then she found out like she got the negative pregnancy test, even though it was like an unplanned kid. Um, then it didn't work out. She was upset when the pregnancy test came back negative, but at the same time, unplanned kids are difficult, and I'm talking like I know a lot about I don't know anything about unplanned kids, but like you might find out you're gonna have an unplanned kid, and you might be really happy, and then when the baby comes it might be amazing, and you might be like, oh, I'm so happy I did this, like I'm so happy I got pregnant, I'm so happy this happened. And then there's the other side where you could be really upset, and you could either have an abortion or put the kid up for adoption or something like that. Can you even get um can you even get a positive pregnancy test like a weekend? How long does it take after you have sex for a pregnancy test to be you know how does it take how long does it take after you have sex for a pregnancy test to come up accurate? Even though there's never a guarantee that it could come up accurate, that's the thing. Even if the pregnancy test is negative, they should still get a test done at the doctor's, because those tests are way more accurate than an actual just pregnancy test. But, I guess we're gonna see. This could be a big turning point in the book. Or, she just gets her period and then they don't have a baby and then that's it. But I guess we'll see what happens. And like I've been saying, I don't like read ahead or whatever. When, so reading this chapter, you guys are hearing me read it for the first time. Like, it's my first reaction to everything that's happening. But pregnancy tests are never accurate. And I want to say, yes, you don't just go around telling people, oh, I have a shit ton of money and stuff. That's how you get taken advantage of, which I'm guessing is why Marshall didn't tell Fiona all about that until just now. But I'm glad he's like, hey, we can take care of this baby, like, we can have money. But I do want to say a baby isn't just about the money, it changes your entire life. Like, you have to plan everything around the kid. And also, pregnancy just sounds horrible, and I don't want any part of it ever. Which, I'm asexual, so that's not gonna happen. That's not gonna be a problem for me, so I'm happy about that. Even though, might not be a problem for me anyway, because I whatever. But the point is, like, baby changes everything. But Fiona is Marshall's girlfriend of like, what is it, like 3 years or something? I don't know. They've been together like, let's see, she was like 16 when they first got together, and now she's like 19, I think. So 3 years ish, something around there, like 3 years or so. I'm just gonna say 3 years, about 3 years they've been together. But anyway. But yeah, that's the thing, and um, yeah. So, my God, he has a ton of money. Yeah. Basically, that's the whole thing. Um, I guess we'll see. And I will be right back with the next chapter, and by right back I mean immediately because I'm not pausing here. I mean, I am gonna press the stop button, but then I'm immediately gonna press the record button again because I am super eager to find out what happens, and it's probably gonna end up being a week ahead in the next chapter, so we can see what happens with like the baby and the pregnancy and the. But you should never count on those tests because they're never accurate, and like Fiona was saying, birth control is only 95% accurate as well. Like, it only works 95% of the time, so they might have gotten the one that doesn't work, or, you know. But also, every form of birth control does not work. Like, the only absolute guarantee for not to have to, not to have a baby is to just be asexual, which is what I'm doing. Well, to be, like, chaste or whatever the fuck it's called. Like, to not have sex is my point. Not have sex ever, that's the only way to guarantee. Or, you know, get your sexual organs removed. Even though that's a whole thing, too. Anyway, I'll be right back with the next chapter. Okay, and I'm back with the next chapter. Oh, wait, I have to click next. There we go. Okay, well, interesting. Oh no. This is called the loss of a life. Wait, for real? Oh no. Okay, I'm nervous. Chapter 60, The Loss of a Life. It had been a long and extremely nerve-wracking week for Fiona, and when yesterday came and went, she wanted to cry her eyes out. She was late. Figuring that it was best to tell Marshall in person, the blonde waited until she finished her classes, and luckily it was once again her parents' late workday. On her arrival, Fiona found Marshall in her room, playing his guitar, and seeing the look on her face, he quickly stopped. Putting the guitar down, he quickly stood. Fiona, what's wrong? Marshall, I have to take the test. She watched as his face grew serious. You're late? Quietly, she nodded. I was hoping it would come today. I was supposed to get it yesterday. Okay, we'll take the test, Marshall said, pulling it from his duffel bag. Taking her hand, they both walked into the bathroom, Fiona sitting on the edge of the tub. Sitting on the edge of the tub while Marshall read the directions. So, what do I have to do? Fiona asked softly. It says here that it comes with 2 tests, so we'll try one now, and if your period doesn't come within the next week, try again with the second one. Okay. All you have to do is pee on the stick. Just take the cap off and just do that, okay? Okay, can you turn around? Yeah, sure, that's no problem, Marshall said as he turned around facing the wall as Fiona took the test. Just put it on the counter when you're done. All that's left to do is wait, he said softly, not turning around until he heard the toilet flush. How long do we wait? Just a few minutes, he said now sitting on the edge of the tub, the blonde sitting next to him, the time ticking by excruciatingly slowly. How long has it been? Fiona asked after what felt like forever. 30 seconds? Oh my god! Marshall! I know this is taking forever. Fiona, I'm sorry. I know, it's okay. I'm just scared, she said softly, picking at the tag on her shirt before reaching for Marshall's hand, holding it tightly. Finally, he looked away from the clock on his phone. Time was up. Are you ready? He asked as he reached for the test lying on the counter. Seeing Fiona nod, he looked down at the test and immediately hugged the blonde. What does it say? Fiona asked, still terrified to look at it. It's negative, he said, feeling a wave of relief. I'm not as relieved as I thought it would be. As I thought I would be, Fiona said softly, looking up at Marshall. It might be too early to tell, the blonde said worriedly. Well, this is a pretty good sign, Fee, but we'll wait another week to see. If nothing happens, you take the other one, okay? Okay, the blonde said softly. She didn't sound okay. Fiona, are you okay? Marshall asked, watching as Fiona leaned against the wall. No, I'm not. Now she turned to face him, with frustration etched in her features. Marshall, I can't believe we were so stupid that we both forgot about something so important. I mean, I know that accidents happen, but this is just terrifying. I haven't been able to sleep, and I'm so freaked out that my parents will find out about this. And the blonde stopped herself, taking a breath and running her fingers through her hair. I'm sorry, I'm just still scared. I'm taking it out on you. I'm sorry, she said, now leaning against the wall and staring at the ground. Standing, Marshall stepped in front of the blonde, tilting her head up so he could look her in the eye. Fiona, it's okay. You have every right to be upset and scared and nervous. You have every right to be pissed at me. If I were you, I probably would have taken my head off already. But it's okay. The negative result is a very good thing, especially since we waited the week. Everything really will be okay, Fiona. I know it will, he said, feeling as her hands wrapped around his wrists. The blonde, leaning forward, brushed her lips against his. Thank you for being strong for us when I can't, Fiona said, grabbing the test and the wrapper and walking from the bathroom. Marshall followed after the blonde, stopping in the doorway of the deck as she walked out of the back of the house, heading towards the trash barrel and tossing the test inside before pausing, looking very peculiar. Marshall watched as she lifted her head, leaning first to the left, then the right. Curious, he too began smelling the air when he caught a whiff of a smoky scent. You smell that, right? Fiona asked, looking Fiona asked, heading towards the fence that led to the front yard, and quickly grabbing his hoodie, Marshall followed the blonde, hopping down the steps, and peeking over the fence, he looked around, finally spotting the large plume of smoke coming from the house across the street, and seeing that, he sighed. FP's probably burning some stuff for his grandma. It's no big deal, Marshall said, as Fiona followed after him and into the house. I don't know, Marsh. I just have a feeling that something's wrong. I know that today is Ember's and FP's swap-out days, but doesn't it seem a bit early for him to be here? How about this? I'll call FP and you go next door to visit Mrs. Flint. That way your mind can be at ease, okay? Marshall asked, watching as Fiona nodded. Okay, I'll go over now, she said, walking from the room while Marshall pulled out his cell phone, dialing FP's number. He expected to hear the typical sounds of FP's fire blazing in the background, but instead, when the redhead answered, he sounded tired and annoyed, surrounded by the sounds of honking. Hey, Marsh, what's up? This traffic is killer. Wait, you're not at your grandmother's house? No, I'm just getting off the highway. Wait, why? Does Ember do any of the compost building? Does Ember do any of the compost burning at all? Marshall asked quickly as he hurried over, grabbing his sneakers and forcing his feet into them. Marshall, I'm a few streets away. What's going on? But before Marshall could speak, Fiona came hurrying through the door. Marshall, her house is on fire. Oh my God, the blonde said frantically before running back across the street. And to Marshall's horror, she ran into the burning building. Shit. What? Fiona, no! Don't go in there! Marshall shouted, chasing after her, but unable to enter the house, already feeling the radiating flames burning at his skin as the sound of squealing tires met his ears. Mrs. Flint! Mrs. Flint! Where are you? Fiona screamed, trying to get through the house, the smoke making it nearly impossible to see as it choked her. Coughing hard, Fiona screamed as something grabbed her around the waist, dragging her roughly back the way she came before throwing her out of the front door covered in ash and soot as she coughed out smoke. If it hadn't been for Marshall catching the majority of her, Fiona knew that she'd have hurt a lot more than the skin knee she'd received from being thrown from the house. Ignitus, get out of there! Marshall shouted, but it was no use. In a flash, he was gone amidst the flames, and now falling debris. The entire neighborhood at this point was surrounding the house, and the sound of sirens could be heard. Continuing to hold the blonde back, who struggled against him, Marshall closed his eyes tightly and hoped that everything would turn out okay. Well, it doesn't, because he knew the house like the back of his hand, and that fact was never more important than it was at this very moment, because with all the smoke, Ignitus couldn't see a thing. The smoke had him choking, but the sight of Fiona stumbling through the smoke, calling for his grandmother as she choked for air, was enough to make none of that matter. Snatching the blonde up, he stormed towards the door, and with not even a word to say to her, he threw the blonde right out the door, watching as Marshall caught her as best he could, with a stricken look on his face. He was back heading towards his grandmother's room, barely hearing what Marshall had shouted at him over the flames. Once while he was younger, Ignitus stared into the fire pit and wondered what it would be like to be in the midst of the raging flames. Now he knew. It was a burning hell. Racing through the house, he made his way to his grandmother's room, coughing violently. It was hotter over here, and the door was shut. Reaching for the handle, Ignitus cried out in pain, jerking his hand back as the metal of the knob seared it. Taking a step back, he began kicking at the door near the handle, and after two tries, the door swung open in a wave of overwhelming heat and smoke. His grandmother was lying on the bed. She had to be unconscious. She had to be. The thought of anything otherwise was unbearable to think of. Lifting her from the bed, Ignitus ignored the fact that she seemed heavier than usual. Don't think, just move. Don't think, just move, he thought as he stumbled from the room, embers stinging his skin, searing his arms and back. He could hear the sound of the flickering flames, the sound of popping burning wood, and coughed as the heat of the smoke burned his throat. The wood of the house groaned under the pressure of the weight, and the moment he noticed it, the sound of collapsing wood met his ears, and immediately a burning pain caught him across his back. Jumping forward, the burning wood knocked him to the ground, searing into the back of his legs as he screamed. Turning and still holding on to his grandmother, Ignitus wrenched his leg free from the burning wood, pinning him to the ground before kicking it off with his other leg. He was coughing violently now, and his eyes burned from the smoke as he grunted, pulling himself to his feet, his grandmother still in his arms. Everything was spinning as he gasped hard for some semblance of air, spotting the light that meant life, that rectangle of brightness that meant survival. Holding her tighter in his arms, Ignitus stumbled towards the door, coughing hard. They fell out of the open door, the cool air hitting his skin, but instead of hitting the ground, Ignitus and his grandmother were caught by several firefighters who were about to go through the door. Take her! Help her do something! Ignitus said hoarsely as he continued coughing. Do something! He shouted, coughing so hard that he was gagging as he watched the EMTs take his grandmother away on a stretcher before everything went black. What the fuck? Well, you know what's gonna happen? Ignitus woke, not to the sound of the beeping heart monitor, nor the bustle of nurses, but to the sound of a quiet though heated argument. I still can't believe you could have been that foolish, Fiona. You could have been killed. I still can't believe you could have been that foolish, Fiona. You could have been killed. That voice was familiar. He'd heard it dozens of times, but right now Ignitus couldn't place it to save his life. Wanting to save somebody's life is not stupid. I just wasn't thinking clearly, Fiona said, her voice hoarse. Clearly you weren't. Fiona, seriously, you could have died, an older male voice said. I get it, okay? I'm sorry, the blonde said, sounding heartbroken. Slowly, Ignitus forced his eyes open. Everything was blurry. He could vaguely see the shapes of two adults standing in front of the short blonde. Finally, the voices registered. They were Fiona's parents. Why were her parents here? The door opened, catching his attention, and Marshall walked in with a plastic bag in his hands. If he wasn't wearing his hoodie, then it must be dark out, or at least late enough for the sun to be low. What did you get for him, sweetie? I got something good for him to drink other than sucky hospital juice, Marshall said simply as he shrugged, sitting down in the chair near Fiona. It was too much work to keep his eyes open any longer, and the moment they shut, Ignitus's world went silent again. For how long he did not know, but when he came to his senses again, all he could hear were hushed voices. Feet, you can't just do something crazy like that again. I know the test said negative, but it's just like you said, we have another week to wait to be sure. It might not be just you that you have to worry about anymore, Marshall said, his voice quiet. I know. Do you think I didn't realize that when you threw me out of that house, Marsh? What I did on instinct. I wasn't thinking about me. I was thinking about Mrs. Flint, who was hurt and couldn't move and trapped inside that burning building. I wasn't thinking about the fact that going in there could hurt our possible baby. If there's one in there, Marshall, I have no idea what I'd do with myself, because now all I can think about is what kinds of effects all that smoke would have had on it. If the test is negative, it'll be such a relief, Fiona's voice said softly. Why don't we go take one right now? Marshall asked, watching as Fiona looked at him curiously. Blood tests are almost always right, so if they say negative, it's a definite negative. Let's go have one taken right now. Okay, but I'll go. Somebody has to stay with Ignitus until his sister gets here, Fiona said sadly as she walked from the room. It was quiet, and sure that he'd be able to talk, Ignitus spoke softly. Ah, Baba dear, I thought you'd gotten the talk enough from your mom to know not to knock up your girlfriend, he said, feeling as his throat burned and his chest ached. He wanted to open his eyes, because it would just be his luck that he thought those words and didn't actually say them. Good, you're awake. How long have you been, actually? Marshall asked, the relief in his voice obvious. Long enough to know that you two are screwed if that test is positive. I've been in and out. I've been in and out a bit. Finally, he forced his eyes open as he turned towards the voice of his best friend. How's my Nana? Is she okay? Staring at Marshall, he saw the gambit of emotions flash across his face before he took a breath, settling with a nervous look on his face, almost as if he didn't know what to say to him. He watched as Marshall opened his mouth to speak, but before he could, the door to the room opened. Iggy! A whirlwind of red and black raced towards him, hugging him tightly. Ah! Ow! Emma, I'm fine, glob, he said, but seeing the stricken look on her face, he stopped. Emma, what's wrong? Iggy, I have to tell you something, okay? Mom and Dad are really upset. They want to blame you for the fire and for Nana, and what's wrong with Nana? Is she okay? He asked, cutting her off, and watching as the same look of nervous concern came across her face. Nobody told you? She breathed, now looking at Marshall. He just now woke up. I was just about to, he said, looking at the red-haired girl. What are you guys talking about? Ignitus asked, looking from Marshall to Ember. Marshall, go stand outside the door. Don't let them in, okay? Ember said softly, watching as Marshall stood, walking from the room, closing the door behind him. Emma, what happened to Nana? Ignitus, the first thing I want you to know is that none of this is your fault. You couldn't have done anything different that would have changed what happened yesterday. Emma, he said in a warning voice. Iggy, Nana passed away. Instantly, it was as if she'd punched him in the stomach. Just like that, he completely lost the ability to breathe. No, Iggy, I'm sorry, she said, watching as he buried his face in his hands. No, she can't be gone. She can't be. She can't. She watched as he looked around for something, anything, before grabbing a pillow and holding it to his face as he screamed out his anguish. Iggy, you have to calm down, Ember said gently, as she touched his arm, picking up the sounds of an argument outside the door, as he jerked his arm away from her. He needed to get out of here. He could not stay here. Reaching over, he grabbed the IV in his arm, ripping it out, the sight of the flowing blood on his arm making Ember scream. Iggy, what are you doing? The moment he stepped from the hospital bed, the door opened, and his parents entered, his father yelling. He couldn't even comprehend what his father was saying as he held his head in his hands, but the moment he felt hands push him, he snapped. Ember and Marshall watched as he grabbed his father by the throat and slammed him against the wall, the blood from the IV running down his arm. You've made my life hell, and you've wanted me gone ever since Ember left. So you know what you want, you get what you want. Finally, I'm gone, he shouted, slamming him against the wall once again before letting him go and storming from the room. Iggy! Immediately, Ember raced after him, Marshall on her heels. The moment she grabbed his shoulder, Marshall pulled her back quickly enough to avoid the swing of her brother's fist. Ember, I love you, I really do, but leave me the hell alone, he snapped, ignoring her hurt look as he stormed down the hall. Marshall, I know, but he won't let anyone follow him. I know him well enough for that, Marshall said, releasing the redhead, who turned to face him. Marshall, it was my fault. They said that the start of the fire was a candle in Nana's room. She asked me to light it before I left. It's all my fault, she said, burying her face in her hands as she began crying. He'll never forgive me. Iggy will never forgive me. Fiona sat in the waiting room for her test results, her eyes closed. She'd been waiting for what felt like days, but she knew that it had only been a few minutes. Fiona, what are you doing here? Is Ignitus getting some tests done? Looking over, Fiona spotted her mother, feeling that growing sense of nervousness. Uh-oh. Mom, what are you doing here? I thought you and Dad were going to get lunch. You had to pass the cafeteria to get down here, and I didn't see you come back, Ellen said, sitting next to her daughter. Sweetie, what's wrong? Closing her eyes, Fiona sighed. She would be as good as caught once the nurse called out her name for the test results. With that thought in mind, she decided to come clean. Marshall and I have gotten more intimate in our relationship, she said, choosing her words carefully as she monitored her mother's expression. Have you now? The older blonde asked seriously. Yes, we have. We've had sex, Fiona said as she fiddled with her fingers. Okay, so why are you here? Now Fiona took a breath. If she told her that they forgot the condom altogether, then she'd never hear the end of it. The condom broke, she lied. She was officially a kid that lied to her mother about important things, but it was a white lie, so that didn't make it worse, right? When we realized that it broke, we went to the pharmacy, bought a Plan B pill, and took it. And after I missed my time of the month, I took a pregnancy test. That was yesterday, and it came back negative. I just want to be absolutely sure that it's negative, not a false reading, so I figured that while I was here getting a blood test would be best, and Marshall agreed with me. So why isn't he here with you right now? Ellen asked, wondering why Marshall was making Fiona go through this by herself. I told him to stay with Ignitus. Hearing this, she nodded. Moments later, a nurse called her daughter's name. Fiona Wright? Are those your results? She asked, looking at the girl who'd gotten paler. Yeah. Well, let's go see them then, she said, standing and offering her daughter her hand and feeling Fiona's trembling hand grip hers as they walked into the lab room. Okay, Miss Wright, correct? Yes. Okay, the results of your lab work have come back. I don't know if this will be good news or disappointing to you, but you are not pregnant. It took a moment for the blonde to register those words as she blinked several times, but turning, she hugged her mother tightly as she began to cry. I'm sorry if this has upset you. No, I'm so happy and I'm so relieved, the blonde said through her tears. It's okay, sweetie, Ellen said softly, petting down her hair. It's okay, Fiona. It's all right now. Marshall left Ember with her parents and searched out Fiona, knowing that she'd want to be up to date with everything going on. Heading towards the blood lab where he knew she'd be, Marshall walked through the door and felt his heart drop when he spotted Fiona crying and hugging her mother tightly, the older woman brushing her fingers through the girl's hair. Oh, Globfy, he said softly, watching as she looked up at him with a huge smile as she laughed, releasing her mother and wrapping her arms around him tightly. We're okay. We're in the clear. The pill worked. I'm not pregnant, Fiona said, sounding so relieved as Marshall hugged her tighter. That is great news, but I have some bad news. We have to go find FP. He flipped. What happened? His parents happened. They blamed him for everything. For the fire, for leaving her alone, for his grandmother dying. He just didn't take the news of his grandmother well. He whipped out his IV and ran out. I wanted to find you so we could go find him, okay? Okay, let's go find him, Marshall, Fiona said, taking his hand as Marshall led the way, and seeing the importance of the matter, Ellen watched as they walked away. Their talk could wait for now. One would think that with the burns and wearing only a hospital gown that he would be easy to find, but that was not the case. The first thing he did was make his way to Fiona's house, taking a pair of old sweatpants and a hoodie, leaving the hospital gown there, and not caring as he did so, and leaving out the front door, he walked over to his truck, spotting the burned building only a few feet away from it. Closing his eyes tightly, he opened the door to his truck, starting it, and looking away, he drove down the street. He knew where Angel's friend was. They'd been there dozens of times. So with his mind set, he headed off down the highway. He didn't care what the guy gave him. He just wanted this pain to stop. He just didn't want to feel anything anymore. He'd give anything to make it go away. Anything. The 3 hour drive seemed to pass in an instant. He couldn't even remember making his way to the apartment. He was just on autopilot. Walking up the stairs, he banged on the door, listening to the sound of the shuffling on the other side, before it cracked open. Hey, lover boy, where's Angel? Where she is doesn't matter. I need something that'll take everything away. I don't want to feel anything. All right, kid, bad breakup with how's little Angel? You need yellows, my friend. I don't care what it is. Just give me something, he said, watching as the man left and returned with a small bag with several pills in it. It's 40 for the bag, he said, and in seconds the cash was slapped into his hand as Ignitus took the bag. How long do I wait for these to work? He asked, staring at the man impassively. Less than 20 minutes, he said, shutting the door as Ignitus made his way to his truck. He needed a place to be alone, a place nobody would find him. Gritting his teeth at the pain on the back of his legs, he immediately began wishing he had something to drink to dull it down. Then the idea came to him, and starting his car, he headed towards the liquor store, and there he took bottle after bottle, leaving the money on the counter. Now he just needed somewhere to go, somewhere nobody would find him, someplace where he could just be. Then it hit him. He could go to Marshall's place. Nobody in their right mind would even look for him down there. Marshall, where do you think he could be? We've looked everywhere, Fiona said quietly as they drove through the town. I mean, we've driven around for hours. Well, not everywhere. We know he went to your place for some clothes, but I went this way for a reason, he said as they waited for a green light. Where are we anyways? Nothing looks familiar, the blonde said, looking around. We're about 10 minutes from my place. Sometimes FP takes the back roads home. It's a longer drive, but he usually does it when he's mad. Besides, I figured we could check his place, his parents' house, and maybe the guy's places. I'm just hoping he's here somewhere, he said as they drove through little side streets before pulling up to a building that looked to be in the middle of being rebuilt. I'll be right back. Give me a sec, Marshall said as he got out of the car heading towards the door, Fiona watching as he knocked and feeling only utter loathing as the familiar form of his ex-girlfriend appeared. Oh, how Fiona despised that girl. She watched as they talked for a moment before the door was slammed shut, Marshall not seeming to be fazed by it in the least. Minutes passed before the door opened again, and the familiar shapes of the band's drummer and the band's backup guitarist and bassist appeared. The three talked for a few minutes before Marshall returned to the car. Ash hasn't seen him at all, but he said that he and Mocha will go look for him. Okay, so what are we gonna do? We're gonna check the other half of the city, Marshall said as if it were the most obvious thing in the world. They're checking friends' houses, and we'll be checking the bars and places like that. Will he really have money to be drinking, though? Fiona asked, recalling how he'd left, leaving all his belongings in the hospital. I mean, he left his wallet and everything when he left. Good point. Well, I know FP always has at least 100 in his truck, so assuming he didn't get gas, he'll have money to spend, Marshall said softly before pausing. Fiona, you're a genius, he said, pulling a U-turn and heading in the opposite direction. Why am I genius? Because he works at a liquor store. That way he can buy more alcohol there, and he has keys to get in, he said as if it made perfect sense, and in a way it did. It took a few minutes to get to the store, and when they did there were several police cruisers and the owner standing out front looking a bit annoyed. Again, Marshall made Fiona stay in the car as he walked over and began talking to the man, who just shook his head, holding up several crumpled bills and motioning to the rows of bottles on his shelves. So what happened? Fiona asked as Marshall climbed back in the car. He said that the silent alarm got tripped, but when the police arrived, the place looked normal, so they waited for Starchy to arrive, and a few bottles were missing and money was on the counter. So he knows that FP's been here. I mean, who else would break into the liquor store just to pay for alcohol? Is he going to be in trouble? I don't think so. Starchy didn't sound mad, just tired and annoyed. Oh, good. Yeah, now we know he's got alcohol, so we just have to find somewhere he can drink it without being bothered, Marshall said, driving down the street. Lying in the bed of his truck in Marshall's garage, FP popped two of the pills, drinking right from the bottle to wash it down. The liquor almost made him choke as it seared his burnt throat, but closing his eyes, he forced it down and followed that with another few gulps. It was just him and the alcohol in the dark. He didn't want to feel anything, and he was getting that wish, because everything just felt numb and sluggish now. His mind was slowing down. All he wanted was to just be. He didn't want to feel, he didn't want to hear or see. He just wanted this pain to go away, to just live without this agonizing heartache. He had nothing left, absolutely nothing, and the one person who had always loved him was gone now. That's not true. He's got Ember. Bringing the bottle to his lips again, he began drinking, ignoring the pain in his throat, until it was all but a distant memory. He didn't know how long he'd been there lying in the back of the truck, but by the time he was more than halfway through the second bottle and beyond drunk, he could hear sounds from outside the garage. It was the sound of a car, and car doors opening. Who the hell would be here? Slowly he pushed himself up, stumbling and falling from the back of the truck, smacking his head on the ground. In a fit of rage, he punched the concrete below him. He stared at the dark mark on the concrete before he began punching the floor over and over again, watching as the mark on the floor got larger and darker the more he hit it. The door to the garage opened, catching his attention, the lights from the fluorescent bulbs blinding him. As quickly he covered his eyes with his arm, feeling hot moisture smear across his forearm in the process. Leaning forward, he put his head against the ground to ease the dizziness. Holy crap! Fiona, go get the first aid kit! Ignitus could hear the sound of hurrying feet moving away from him, and groaned, feeling as his head began to throb. Shut the damn light off! He slowed, hearing the flick of the light switch. Ig, move your hand. I need to see where you're bleeding, Marshall said firmly, grabbing Ignitus's arm as he knelt by his head. Don't touch me, he growled, swinging at Marshall, who took the hit, not expecting it. Ignitus, you know the rule. First one's free, Marshall said, his voice holding a warning tone, this time moving back quick enough to avoid the second punch as his drunken friend launched himself at him. Fiona returned to an all-out brawl, dropping the first aid kit in shock as she gasped. She'd, ne- she'd never seen either of them fight before. Throw a punch here and there, sure, but this was not just throwing a few swings. It was horrifying. Her first instinct was to jump in and break it up, almost as if sensing that Marshall pinned Ignitus to the ground just long enough to look at Fiona and get out his quick sentence. "Stay out of this!" he shouted before he hit the ground with a grunt, feeling pain rack him as the redhead's fist caught him in the stomach. Fiona knew why Marshall wanted her to stay out of it. With how drunk he was, he wouldn't care who he hit as long as he got his frustrations out. But after seeing them go at it like a pair of snarling beasts, she couldn't take it anymore. Especially with Marshall not being at his peak because of the chemo and taking the worst of it. Storming over after a particularly nasty-looking hit, Fiona smacked Ignitus in the back of the head as hard as she could, watching as it jarred him before he turned his attention to her, grabbing her by the collar of her shirt and jerking her close. Closing her eyes for a moment, Fiona prayed that this would work. Placing her hands on the clenched hand that held her shirt tightly, she stared at him. His normally warm and friendly amber-colored eyes were icy and cold, filled with so much anger and hurt barely contained that it frightened her. The smell of the alcohol on his breath was sickening, but the blonde tried to ignore it as she spoke softly. This this is not going to bring your Nana back, Iggy. Mrs. Flint would not want you to be hurting your friends, she said with a small voice, wincing as he clenched her shirt tighter, though he still hadn't made any motions of actually hitting her. How do you think she'd feel if she saw you like this, Ignitus? She'd be upset. You'd make her very sad, Fiona said, her voice quivering in nervousness. She watched as slowly the anger left his eyes. Ignitus, I know you loved her. I knew I know you loved her and she loved you. She loved you so much and she was always proud of you, but this wouldn't make her proud. Marshall listened to the blonde's quivering voice as he slowly stood up. He'd definitely have some bruised ribs from this fight. He continued to listen while watching FP for any signs that he might snap and hit her as he did so. She'd never want to see you hurting people. I'm sorry, I'm so sorry. I know that I'll never understand what you're feeling, but we're here for you. Just like we all were with Moko. All of us are here for you. Just tell me what I can do for you. Ignitus, what can I do for you? What can I do to make you hurt less? She asked, feeling as the grip on her shirt vanished. He was silent, not saying a word as his face crumpled, desperately holding back the tears as he leaned forward, resting his forehead on the blonde's shoulders. Cautiously, Fiona wrapped her arms around her friend, hugging him and feeling as he did the same. It's okay, she said softly as her hands moved in soothing circles on his back. It's okay. Oh, it isn't. It'll never be okay, he said hoarsely, his voice void of life. Can I please check the cut on your head? You're bleeding a lot, Ignitus, Fiona said, feeling nervous that the sight of the blood would make him start swinging again, though the feel of his blood soaking into her shirt caused more concern than the thought of him hitting her did. Okay, Marshall's gonna help me, okay? I need his help and I don't want you two to start fighting, okay? Okay. Do you promise? Yeah. Tell me that you promise. Promise me that you won't try to fight him. I promise. Good, thank you. Marshall, go get the first aid kit, Fiona said, looking behind FP to Marshall, who was now leaning on the truck, who nodded at her before making his way over to where she dropped it. The three of them remained silent while Fiona wiped away the blood from his head and the dried blood from the ivy in his arm. She made it a point to tell him every time there was a possibility of potential pain, yet not once did he flinch. Holding a gauze pad to the split on his hairline, Fiona stared at him. How could she explain that she had such a bad feeling about him at this moment? It was almost as if she could feel him slipping away from them. Hey, she said softly, still holding the gauze. Come back. Fiona watched as his eyes slowly focused before locking onto hers. I'm gonna have to wrap your head to keep the padding on. Is that okay? This time he didn't speak. Looking away, he nodded before fixing his gaze to the ground. Marsh, give me the tape and the gauze, please. Marshall picked through the first aid kit, handing her the gauze, and digging around, he found the medical tape, handing her that as well, watching as she taped the gauze pad in place before she began wrapping it around his forehead. When she was done with that, she started on his arm, wiping the rest of the dried blood off with a moist cloth. It was bruised from where he ripped out the IV, and cleaning it, Fiona put some antiseptic on it before wrapping that as well. Standing, the blonde tugged him to his feet, Marshall helping to keep him upright. Come on, buddy, let's go to the living room, Marshall said as they all walked through the house. As they all walked into the house together, he and Fiona helped him lay on the couch. Do you need anything? Fiona asked, watching as he shook his head. Turning, he faced the couch, his back to them. If you need anything, let us know, okay? Taking Marshall's hand, Fiona walked back to the garage, releasing him as she reached into the truck's window, finding the keys and pocketing them. You know he'll want to leave, Marshall said softly, and seeing the dark bruise on his jaw, Fiona reached up, brushing her fingers lightly against it. You know we can't let him leave like this. Marshall closed his eyes, feeling as her fingers continued to graze against his skin. Stepping close, Fiona brushed her lips against his, her hand moving down his chest. The moment she touched his ribs, though, she felt as he pulled away with a groaning gasp. Let me see it, she said quickly, tugging at his shirt. Bob, Fiona, you're always in a hurry to get my clothes off, Marshall said with a smirk that earned him a smack on the arm. Quiet, you. Now lift your arms, Fiona said, still tugging at his shirt, pulling it over his head as Marshall lifted his arms. The dark blue bruise was easy to spot against his pale skin. Go upstairs. I'll make you an ice pack, okay? Okay. With a wince, Marshall walked off. Making her way into the kitchen, Fiona grabbed the ice tray, cracking it and putting some of it into a plastic Ziploc bag before wrapping it in a cloth, carrying it up the stairs for him. Closing the door behind her, the blonde found Marshall lying on the bed, still shirtless, waiting for her. Finding one of Marshall's old shirts and handing him the ice pack for his ribs, the blonde made her way back downstairs, heading towards the shower, glancing at FP as she walked by. He hadn't moved once since he'd turned over. Thinking of all the things she'd need to do to check Marshall's ribs, Fiona washed quickly, getting the blood off of her before hopping out of the shower, quickly dressing as she dried her hair. Making her way back upstairs after grabbing the Tylenol, Fiona was set and determined to check his ribs properly. She ran her hand gently across the bruised area, feeling for any differences, and feeling none, she felt relief. Can you take a deep breath in? She asked. Sure thing, Dr. Fee, Marshall said, taking a breath as deeply as he could, watching as she nodded. Well, they don't look broken, so you probably have bruised or fractured ribs, she said, opening the bottle of pain medication and shaking two into her hand. Take these and keep you side-iced for the next few days, okay? Sure thing. You're disturbingly knowledgeable about this. Life lesson, Marsh, Fiona said simply. Aren't you supposed to wrap my ribs or something? No, that hurts more. Plus, breathing deep every now and again helps you heal faster. You'll be better in about a month and a half, she said, lying on the bed, placing her hand over the makeshift ice pack as she snuggled against him. It was pointless to ask how he was feeling. From the look of him, it was more than obvious. So, how am I supposed to sleep if I'm sore and hurt? Marshall asked, smirking a little bit at the blonde's answer. Very carefully. Now sleep, please, she said, giving him a kiss and snuggling against him. Okay. Closing his eyes with a wince, he focused on his breathing, feeling as the blonde against him began breathing slow, steady breaths. He listened as he breathed, timing his breaths with hers, until eventually he fell asleep alongside her. Wow, that was a long chapter and a really intense chapter. Okay, that was a little longer than I expected it to be. That was that was really fucking intense. I don't know what's gonna happen next, but next up is chapter 61 and 62, and that'll probably be either today or tomorrow. I'm gonna be recording it today for sure, but I don't know if I'm gonna be uploading it today or tomorrow. I mean, I guess it depends on when this video goes up as well. So, anyway, I love each and every one of you guys. Please don't forget to always be yourself. Be good to yourselves and others. And you are valid, and I will see you guys all in the next video. Bye.